Chapter 23. David just could not make himself do it. He put down his brush. "Primrose, are you sure?" She looked down from the roof. "If you ask me that one more time, but it feels so weird." "You're going to look weird with a white face in about 2 seconds. But whoever heard of a bedroom without windows? You have to have at least one." "Why? So egg throwers can look at me, so you can look out." "There's nothing to look at." "Paint." It had been hard enough to paint the side windows, but the last remaining window, the most important window of all? Primrose thumped across the roof on her knees, and with an angry swat, left a 3-foot track of white paint primer across the front windshield. "There go your excuses," she growled. "Now finish it." Reluctantly, David took up his brush and, standing on a chair, began painting the windshield. The last thing he saw inside before the last brush stroke was the propped-up picture on Primrose's dresser. He had wanted to ask his father about it, but he would not be home for days, and David did not have the patience to wait. So he had resorted to his grandmother. First, he asked her if she knew that picture frames were sold with people's pictures already in them. His grandmother, who was snipping the stems of flowers from the backyard, simply stared at him for a moment, shocked and overjoyed that he would ask her a question. She quickly recovered and said, "Yes, she knew that." David walked away. If he had to speak to her, at least he could do it in pieces, and if possible, at her inconvenience. Later, he caught her as she was talking on the phone. "Why do they do it?" he said. "Just a second," she said into the phone, not at all irritably, and she cupped her hand over the receiver. "Do what, David?" "Put pictures in the frames, so they can give the customer an idea how their own picture would look in the frame." She was heading out the door for her evening walk when he asked her what kind of people they used for those pictures. "Oh, usually models or movie stars," she said. She waited at the door, her expression saying, "I like you talking to me. Please ask me more." As she watched her favorite TV show that night, he thrust the picture out at her. "You know who this is?" She hesitated, then dared to take it from his hand. She lowered the volume with the remote control. She nodded, smiling. "Oh, this is Clark Gable. He was a movie star many years ago." He took the picture back. It bugged him that he could not annoy her. "How old is he?" "Oh, he died some time ago. If he were living, I guess he'd be in his 90s, maybe older." "His name's not Bob." "Bob?" She stared at the picture. "No, I'm sure it's Clark Gable. He was known as the king of the movies." And not Primrose's father, David had fully realized in bed that night. Primrose thinks he's her father, but he's not. She's wrong. It took them most of the day to lay a primer and final coat. Nothing on the outside showed that wasn't white. White stumps, white windows, white fenders, everything about the van was white. "I don't like it," said David. "Well, it won't," she said. "It's going to look better. It's nowhere near, She was looking down the street. A long car was pulling up to the house. A lady in black skin-tight pants got out, followed by a small, yipping, long-haired brown and yellow dog. The lady pointed to the front yard, which was indistinguishable from the dirt and gravel driveway. "Poop here, Mimi," she said. Mimi pooped, and the two of them went to the front door. The dog looked at Primrose and David. The lady did not. The dog yipped. They entered the house. Primrose picked up a paint stirrer, walked over to Mimi's warm poop, lifted it carefully from the dirt, and put it in the back seat floor of the lady's car. "Come on," she said. "Wait till you see this." She led him by the hand, to David's surprise, around the house. "Shh, tiptoe," and in the back door. At the drapery wall of the reading room, she knelt and pulled him down. She drew the drape aside an inch or two. Madame Dufy, Mimi the dog, and the black-legged lady were sitting on the rug. Madame Dufy had one of Mimi's paws in her hand. She appeared to be intently studying the paw. She began to nod. Yes, I see wonderful things. A long and happy life. The dog yipped. Primrose got up, no longer trying to be quiet, and she said aloud, You believe it? And she went out the back door. They sat in the van, the doors left open as they had been all during the painting. I don't know who's worse, said Primrose, my mother or that lady. She's come before, said David. Yeah, a couple times a year. First time she came, she had a different dog. Guess it didn't have such a long and happy life after all. Primrose lay back and stared at the ceiling. She balled her fists and pounded the floor. She jumped up. She swatted her House Beautiful magazines and sent them flying like paper ducks. Why can't I just have a nice, normal mother like everybody else? She stared at David, yet seemed unaware of the irony in her question. A mother that cooks dinner, that takes me places, that buys me stuff. Huh! Her laugh was cold. Those rings on her feet, you saw? Know where she got them? From me. I found them. I was going to sell them at the flea market. It's everything. Clothes, combs, even the teddy bear. They're all mine. She takes my stuff. My mother, who's the daughter around here anyway? I'm supposed to take her stuff. She stomped twice around the van and came back in. You know what's funny? You know what's really funny? David, wide-eyed, shook his head. I'll tell you what's really funny. She pointed out the door. She tells everybody the same thing. I see a long and happy life. It doesn't matter who. You could be ready to croak at any minute. A long and happy life. You could be a lobster heading for the pot. A long and happy life. She kept saying it in a funny way, her head wobbling like a puppet's, and David could not keep a laugh from coming out. Primrose didn't seem to notice. Well, while she was telling everybody else what a long and happy life they're going to have, what kind of life am I having, huh? What about my future, huh? I'll tell you what. She held out her hand. She pretended to trace the lines of her palm. Ah, yes, here we are. I see. Ugh, a yucky life. She gurgled up some spit, reached back and spit out on the sidewalk. She left the car again. She was pacing, flinging her arms, kicking stones. She bent over, flapping her arm goofily at the horizon. As she stomped around the van, David tracked her passing one door, then the other. She came back in. You saw me at the library, remember? David nodded. You know why I was there, huh? David shook his head. I was there because I never went to sleep with my mother reading to me. She flopped onto the beanbag chair. Did you? David nodded. Right. So did everybody else except me. I try it a couple times every summer. I go to summer story time. I close my eyes. I try to pretend the voice is my mother's, but it never works. I just keep hearing the story, and I never get to sleep. She snapped her face away from him. She slumped in the beanbag chair. In his mind, David heard the old familiar words. Mike Mulligan had a steam shovel, a beautiful red steam shovel. Her name was Mary Ann. How those words used to spin the drowsies about him every night, every single night when he was little. Even now, it tickled him that a steam shovel had a girl's name. He felt guilty for having such a warm memory in the presence of Primrose's pain. He wished he could make her feel better, but he couldn't think of anything to say. She was subdued now, dreamy. She reached for the framed portrait. She stared for a long time at the picture in her lap, and David understood that a great and terrible secret had fallen to him. He had been given custody of Primrose's dream, her heart. He understood he could not tell her that he knew the truth. Not ever.